Surprises have never appealed to me. Not the guess what or birthday kind of sort, and most definitely not the kind that enters your life under the guise of someone you can trust. Elia Monroe is my name. I'm 36 years old and I own and operate Still Point, a woodworking studio beside a lake in northern Minnesota. I kept it going, at least initially, more out of honor than ambition, and my late father gave it that name before he died.
Our areas of expertise included custom restorations for cabins and lodges throughout the state, reclaimed wood decor, and handcrafted furniture. Work quietly, sincere labor, the type that allows you to gauge how smooth the final coat of beeswax oil or sanded cedar has become. That's how I loved it. Another item my father left me was an ancient pocket watch with hands that always pointed to 4 to 17 and a broken glass face. I never corrected it, but it didn't tick. I stored it directly beneath the ledger in the register's front drawer. I didn't understand when Dad used to say, "Even broken time teaches you something." Now I believe I do, the day we received that sizable order from Larch Pine Resort. Things started to change. The project took 6 weeks to complete and included 3 complete dining sets and 12 handmade rocking chairs, carved with the resort's pinecone logo out of white oak. The largest position we have ever held. Naturally, I relied on Marin, the only other person I trusted enough to manage the business end while I worked the bench, because we were understaffed for it. I had been friends with Marin Wells since college. I had majored in fine arts and she in design. Following college, we both became interested in woodworking, and after an unsuccessful attempt to build a workshop in Portland, we packed up and moved back to my hometown. She was the first person I wanted to hire when I grew Still Point last year. She was familiar with the clientele, the trade, and above all, me. We were on time, I constructed. She was in charge of billing, sourcing, and ordering. We had occasional disagreements, but nothing major, and I paid her properly. Nothing alerted me. I ignored the first sign, since it was so little. One day, Marin requested my login credentials to the supplier's website, stating that she was having trouble with an order for black walnut slabs from Michigan. I handed it to her. Without hesitation, trust does just that. When someone you care about says, "Just for a sec," you don't question it. The ledger then failed to balance. It was the end of October. The air smelled like distant snow and burning hickory, and the leaves were rust-colored confetti on the lake. I generally loathed writing end-of-month books, but this time it felt like a welcome change. I thought it was just the season, but I had been worn out from working long days and neglecting my own needs. Busy did well. Up until then, the figures didn't add up. The bank statements did not include 3 vendor payments that were noted in the ledger. I reasoned that perhaps I hadn't correctly synced anything in the app. I checked again, then made another check, lost. Then I noticed the 4,980 wire transfer to Maple and Echo Events, a name I was unfamiliar with. That isn't a source of timber. I blinked. I tried to recall if we had collaborated on a promotional project that I had forgotten about, then noticed 2 more. To Northridge Catering, $2,300, Lumeo Lighting Design for $1,750. All of them were posted in the previous 2 weeks. All of them are recorded under our account as business expense. A chill grew in my stomach. My initial reaction was one of disbelief. Perhaps Marin neglected to inform me that he had made a reservation for the Larch Pine project. Perhaps we had been invited to a showcase or retreat. Perhaps I was becoming crazy. I sent her a text. "Quick cue, please. Maple and Echo." "What is it?" I saw that in the statement, no response, strange. Usually Marin responded to texts in a matter of minutes. I waited. An hour went by. Next 3. That night, I stayed late at the store and went through all of the transactions from the previous 60 days. From our email, I extracted the receipts, verified PayPal logs, twice ordered by cross-reference. I discovered the invoice at that point. Autumn Wedding Deposit Received was the label name of client Marin Wells. I gazed at it. The fact that she had used our corporate account for her own wedding was so obvious that I actually leaned back and rubbed my eyes, like a movie cliché. However, it was a whole planning suite with our address and EIN paid to Still Point Workshop LLC. I felt empty, not upset. Not quite yet. Later on, that happened. The silence came first, the kind of silence that envelops you, like icy lake fog, that indicates that a genuine part of you broke, but you're unsure exactly what it was. The following morning, I refrained from confronting her. Instead, I pulled out the broken pocket watch, opened the drawer, sat on the back steps with a strong black coffee, and did what I always did when I needed to think. My father used to say that if you're patient, time will show you people. I observed the motionless hands, 4:17, 4:17 at all times, and I understood. This wasn't an error, it was a decision, wearing her trademark wool coat and the lilac scent that made me think of safer times. Marin came at precisely 9:12 a.m. She grinned as if nothing were amiss. I returned the smile. Not because I thought she was real, however, I needed time. Only those who are silent are able to make use of that type of time. As if nothing were wrong, Marin's laughter filled the store. That morning, she was pacing between the shipping table and the order board, while on the phone finalizing the RSVP total, and maybe upgrading the lighting package. She gave me a nonchalant wave while mouthing, "Just a sec." Something seemed like it had come loose deep in my ribs, but my hands were firm. From behind the counter, I observed her, observed how she moved in this area with such ease, the identical area where beneath a hanging lamp, my father used to draw blueprint lines, where I learned how to manually carve dovetails. When a neighbor lost her house in a storm, we once manufactured coffee tables for her for free. For me, this was a place of truth, of effort, weight, and value. She had managed to transform it into a bridal showroom. "Hey, do you have a minute?" I said when she eventually hung up. "Obviously," she answered, smiling broadly as she brushed sawdust off her sleeve and walked over. "What's going on?" I gave her a direct glance. "What are Echo and Maple?" I could tell when her eyes flicked just a little movement, but she bounced back fast. "Oh, it's a vendor I was considering for potential event partnerships, cross-branding concepts. You know, it resembles an open house combined with an art walk." I cocked my head. "For $5,000, she blinked once more. "Hold on, 5 thou what?" I carefully set the ledger on the workbench between us after taking it out from under the counter. "In October alone, you approved 3 moves, not for wood, for tools. No, but for your nuptials. Use the money of Still Point, not knowing or agreement." For a long time, she remained silent, simply looked at the pages. Then she crossed her arms carefully as though something fragile had broken under her grin. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Elia. Isn't that what they say all the time? But you did." I muttered back. "Not just me either. You harmed the company, our standing. You funded your event using my name, my tax ID, and my family's employment. You thought I wouldn't notice." There was a slight change in her tone. "I intended to repay it." When she paused, "After the honeymoon, perhaps earlier. I simply felt so much pressure and I assumed you would comprehend." Behind the counter, my hands were clenched. "Marin, I gave you access to my business, the legacy of my family." "You also concluded that it was an ATM." Her expression stiffened. "Stop being dramatic. I've put forth just as much effort." "No," I interrupted, maintaining my composure. "You were employed by me. I told you about this. I had faith in you." Her face flashed with something guilt. "Perhaps. However, it wasn't deep enough to halt the subsequent events." "You're exaggerating this," she stated bluntly. "It's not as if I set the property on fire or took your truck. There are only a few charges. Family firms consistently write off more losses. Hell, your father would have been able to relate." And the knife's twist was that by using his name, bringing him along for her heist, I remained silent, simply turned and made their way to the rear office. Silently, I shut the door and secured it. My dad's tools were still hanging over the old desk where I sat, pulled the drawer open. At 4:17, the pocket watch remained motionless. It was in my palm, heavy, chilly, known. I was aware that this was the wound that would not heal itself. I didn't go home that night. I stayed and went through everything in the workshop. I retrieved all of the previous quarter's bank statements, every charge, every login log I emailed, contacts and called vendors, put the pieces of her expenditures together. She had opened a line of credit using my EIN, paid a deposit for a photo shoot on a mountainside rented lighting equipment, and even engaged a private chef. All in the name of Still Point, on 2 contracts, she falsified my digital signature, and she put it all on the internet. She was standing in a field of goldenrod, wearing a dress the color of champagne with the caption, "I am incredibly grateful to Elia, the best friend and business partner a girl could ask for. You fulfilled this dream." I didn't get tagged. However, my business was, I spent a lot of time staring at that caption that evening. Next, I opened a Word document that was blank and wrote Declaration of Purpose Financial Misconduct regarding Marin Wells' summary forgery, identity theft, and embezzlement. I kept it. It was encrypted, not yet for usage, only to be aware that I could. 2 days later, Marin stopped showing up. No warning. Don't apologize. Nothing but quiet. Her laptop vanished, her belongings from the break room were gone, and her last text message read, "Need some breathing room. Avoid taking any hasty decisions. Rash, similar to having faith in someone. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Instead, I went out back and dropped a fresh stone into the shallow water by the dock while standing next to the lake. The antique watch is still warm from my palm and in my pocket. There was silence in the lake, but I had changed in some way, and now I realized that I wasn't the only one hurt. What happened next was likewise up to me to decide. Betrayal should burn right. However, it froze for me. Like the lake beyond the store, it gradually closes in layer by layer until the cold no longer affects you, simply silent pressure underneath the surface. I waited after Marin vanished. Not for her, for the truth to become clear. I knew that acting impulsively would cause me to lose my composure. Instead, I built. Small cabin stools for an upstate winter lodge had been the subject of a recent contract. Not much, but enough to keep my hands busy and my mind active. I spent late nights at the shop every night, downloading reports, cross-checking statements, and copying each contract and screenshot into a color-coded folder. I knew I had to gather, but I wasn't sure what I would do with it yet. As if I were stacking kindling for a fire, I might have to start someday. The silence had become angular by the second week of November. Maureen wasn't simply not there, she was changing the story. I nearly choked when I saw a puff post about women creators of the North that appeared on a local site. Without me, she was grinning in front of Still Point's storefront, discussing how she was establishing a new chapter and funding her aspirations with the help of a small local business partner who had faith in her from the beginning. I was not given a name. The address, however, was obvious. The logo is visible. My image was weaponized. After allowing the page to load 3 times, I got up, went to the drawer, and removed the pocket watch. 4:17, 4:17 at all times. I gave my lawyer a call that night. She asserted that restorative action is possible. However, her cooperation will be necessary. Other than that, this is a simple scam. I stopped. First, I want to give her the opportunity to deal with this. However, if she doesn't, after that we escalate. She stated plainly. I thus wrote a note, direct and unambiguous. Marin, every instance of fraudulent use of business resources and unapproved spending has been documented by me. You've got 7 days to reply. Before I call the police, I'm giving you one chance to resolve this through mediation. Elia. Not a threat, no feeling, just the facts. She didn't answer. However, her fiancé did. A man I had never met before entered my workshop 3 days later with a tiny packet in his hand. Hello, he said clumsily. My name is Devon. I suppose I was her fiancé Moran's. I blinked. She informed me of the circumstances. Pieces and fragments, he added. Then on her laptop, I noticed your email. She didn't close it. If it's okay with you, I believe you need this. He gave the envelope to me. A printout of Marin's planning. Spreadsheet was enclosed, each fee, each phony client account, even a still point backup card file. I gazed at the page as if it were on fire. I had no idea, Devon muttered. It's not about the cash. She informed me that you were retiring, so I assumed she had a savings account, said she was taking over the company. I looked him in the eyes. She informed me that I was going. I inquired. Shameful, he nodded. You claimed to be prepared to let go of the burden. I exhaled slowly, unsure whether to scream or laugh. I put the broken watch on the bench instead, reaching under the counter. Devon's head cocked. Doesn't function. No, I replied, but it has never misled me. That afternoon he departed. I added the spreadsheet to the folder. After copying it, I sent the Chamber of Commerce an email the following day, asking them to fix the article, sent paperwork outlining the false information. They didn't answer. However, the blog article was silently removed a week later. Don't apologize. No public apology. Simply remove it. It was something, though. A change. I made an appointment with the Restorative Mediation Office of the county. I informed them that I was seeking resolution rather than retribution. If she came clean, there would be no criminal charges, financial accountability, or public honesty. They concurred. The mediation was scheduled. Then came the letter, not from Marin, from her lawyer. Any attempt to discredit my client or make irrational financial claims against them will be deemed harassment and handled appropriately. I grinned. The letter was folded and sent my lawyer the still point backup card file over email. I sat on the shop steps that night with a little bottle of dark wood stain in one hand and the pocket watch in the other. I made a fresh stained sign. Walter Monroe founded Still Point Truth, rebuilt it. Then I did something that Marin didn't anticipate. I gave each vendor she paid a call. Every photographer, florist, caterer, and planner, and quietly, plainly, I told them the truth. The money that was stolen had been used to pay them, that I would support them if they decided to launch civil claims. Not all of them gave good answers. However, some did, and her well-preserved image started to crumble slowly and silently. She was no longer featured on the blog. Her website vanished and a venue cancelled her deposit, citing concerns about financial sources. She made one call, blocked phone number. I didn't respond. The lake was now completely shut white, vast and silent as it froze, and beneath it, justice flowed like a steady icy torrent that was unstoppable. The air outdoors was glassy and thin on the morning of the mediation. In the car, I could see my breath, a ragged band of frost coiled around the windshield's border. Everything seems to stop in northern Minnesota in December, as if time is holding its breath. The pocket watch weighed heavy inside my coat pocket, as it had at every turn. Even though it hadn't worked since my dad passed away, it always worked when it mattered. The meditation chamber was in a low-grey building with humming fluorescents and damaged ceiling tiles hidden behind the county municipal building. I was 15 minutes early. I only brought the watch and a manila envelope. Kate was the mediator. She was in her mid-40s, had serene eyes and spoke softly. She nodded to welcome me. I appreciate you coming, Aaliyah. I am aware that you are looking for a settlement without official charges. I gave a nod. I won't pursue prosecution if she is prepared to accept full responsibility and make restitution. I just want it done correctly. Kate looked at the timepiece. She affirmed that she would be present. Her tardiness was 15 minutes, next 20. The door then opened. Marin wore a structured coat, big gold earrings and heels too sharp for this place. She had perfect makeup. Her lips were clenched. She avoided looking at me. Kate got up. Ms. Wells, we appreciate you being here. Have a seat, please. We took seats at a narrow plastic table across from one another. This is a voluntary mediation. Kate started. In place of criminal proceedings, the objective is to come to a formal agreement for restitution and admission of injury. Aaliyah has provided records indicating financial mismanagement and deception. You've got time to look over that package, Marin. Before we start, is there anything you would like to say? Across the table, Marin's hand moved. Before opening the folder, she gave it 2 taps. With a tight voice, she said slowly, "I've looked at the documents. However, I want to clarify that I never meant to hurt Elia. Yes, I made some business choices. However, it seemed to me that we shared a vision." My mouth remained still. "Not quite yet. You falsified my signature." I muttered, "A credit line was opened in my name by you. You informed others that I was leaving the company. It isn't vision, that is theft." She laughed tightly. "You're quite theatrical. It's not as if I obtained a mortgage. I was constructing something. For us both, I bent over. For us both, you organized a wedding without informing me with funds from my business. You referred to my legacy as a gift while wearing it like a costume." She scowled. "You consistently gave the impression that you were unconcerned about the company. In that shop you live like a ghost. For whom exactly were you doing it?" I didn't respond. Rather, I took the broken pocket watch out of my coat pocket and set it on the table. With a gentle click, it touched down. The room froze. "What is that?" She sneered. I touched the broken glass with my fingers. "I got this from my dad. For years it has been broken. At 417 I'm stuck. However, I maintain it, because it serves as a reminder that something is not always worthless, simply because it isn't functioning as well as it once did." Marin appeared, perplexed, irritated. "I called that shop home. My father's fingerprints were found in the business, and you entered and handled it as though it were tiny cash." Kate cleared her throat. "Ms. Wells, are you prepared to take accountability for the charges?" Marin took a seat. She tightened her jaw. She glanced at the watch and then back at me. At last she responded, "No." "I'll reimburse a portion. I'm not confessing to fraud, though. Nothing I sign will indicate that I stole." Kate put down her pen. "This concludes the mediation." Marin jerked to his feet. "Are you sure you want this to be made public? Do you think they'll trust you more than I will?" I also got up. I said, "They don't have to. The paper trail does." I grabbed the watch, put it in my pocket, and turned to go. Marin's harsh, brittle voice screamed out to me, "You're attempting to destroy me." I stopped at the entrance. "No," I said without looking around. "I'm attempting to prevent you from destroying what remains of me." The warrant was served by the sheriff's office. 2 weeks later, I wasn't present when it took place, did not wish to be. Back in the shop, I was sanding an ashwood slab for a bench commission. An old blues song was playing on the radio. The workshop's warmth against the cold outside caused the windows to steam. It buzzed on my phone. "She is being held. The DA will contact you next." I refrained from crying, didn't cheer. I simply took the pocket watch out of the drawer. 417, I touched the glass with my thumb. The hands remained motionless. However, I had. The night she entered a guilty plea, it snowed, like silent punctuation. Little flakes glide down. While the lawyers talked about reparation schedules behind closed doors, I saw them settle on the courtroom lobby windowsill. When she exited the room, she didn't give me a look, didn't speak, simply pulled her coat tight around her as if she had been stripped naked. Everything I requested was included in the plea deal. 3 years of probation, financial counseling, and complete restitution of the misappropriated cash. No time in jail, only responsibility. Some individuals told me that I ought to have demanded more. One friend claimed, "She stole your business identity." Another person replied, "You let her off easy." Perhaps, however, clarity and vengeance are not the same thing between retribution and harmony. And I stopped pursuing things that wouldn't help me get better. It was calmer now in Still Point. A part-time bookkeeper was employed by me. Line by line, we restored our vendors' faith. Rebuilding client confidence takes longer than regaining credit, which took months. However, we did, slowly. Even when it didn't seem like my heart could build, my hands knew how to do it. I reopened the shop's lakefront section in the early spring. A new sign was added. Simple cedar lettering that has been hand-carved, Still Point constructed with honesty. The alteration was noticed by a few others didn't. However, I was aware. And it was sufficient. I got a letter in the mail one morning. No address for return one folded page, with meticulous block letter writing on it. I had no idea how she was spending the money. I ought to have inquired further. I went out. I'm beginning anew. I hope the silence brings you calm once more. No signature was present. However, I knew Devon was the source. I placed it next to the watch in the drawer. There is still no ticking on the pocket watch. I've disassembled it a dozen times. With the patience of someone who knows that broken objects don't always want to be fixed, the gears were lubricated, the fractured glass was replaced, and even the balance wheel was adjusted. At 4:17, however, the hands are still at rest. Perhaps that's where it belongs. I saw the sky become peach and silver as I stood barefoot in the soft dirt behind the store. On the lakefront late that summer, I carried a smooth stone that I had decorated over the years, the last of a dozen. It had a single black line on it, skewed slightly off-center like a compass needle. We had planted a birch tree the year Marin went to town, and I knelt down and put it at the base of it. When we were kids, prior to everything, I am occasionally asked if I regret not continuing, not bringing a damages lawsuit, not making her name more widely known in the media. I'm honest with them. The goal was not to destroy her. It was about taking back who I was. Sometimes the world won't say sorry for what it takes away from you. However, you have the option to halt the taking. You are able to draw a line, reassemble the fence and begin again, calmly with your hands steady, your name unharmed. A young woman visited the store last week. She claimed to have read about us in the journal of a local maker. If I still took apprentices, she inquired. She was interested in learning how to make things that last, such as carving and sanding. I examined her hands. Grizzled from working as a waiter, bite the fingernails, eyes weary but hopeful. Yes, I said. For the first time, something inside of me had space to give. I pulled the drawer one last time after she departed that evening. In my palm, I held the pocket watch. 4:17 was still indicated by the hands. However, I didn't think they were trapped for the first time in years. They appeared motionless to me, and I realized failure is not inaction. It is prepared, it is recuperation. It's realizing that you don't need time to move. Once you're entire again,